Hey guys, no fancy intro here. So my video is kind of a look back of when I first started YouTube with my brand new gaming computer. So back when it was 2016, I built my very first gaming computer. It wasn't anything spectacular. I spent about $500 give or take. I have parts in the video that show where each computer component is from where I started to where I am today. But it was around $500, and it was the first step into me going into PC gaming. I originally owned a PS4 and Xbox One. I own neither of them now. My parents or my family own the PS4 now, and I sold the Xbox in order to get the graphics card, which at the time was an RX 480. So the CPU I chose for my very first build was the Pentium G4560. For those of you who are budget builders back in 2016, this was the best price to performance. At $50, which I do remember the price of, I remember the price of every single component I've bought. For $50, this was the best price to performance. 2 cores, 4 threads, and at the time Intel's high IPC over the competition, as well as just the higher clock speeds available on it. It was a very good CPU. The motherboard I didn't spend too much money on. It was an ASRock B250 motherboard. It was just kind of cut and dry B250. I knew that spending a lot of money on there wouldn't be important. For RAM, I just got a 8 gig stick of DDR4 2400 megahertz. It wasn't anything fast, but it did get the job done, which I did upgrade later in the video, you will see. It just ran at 2400 megahertz, so it wasn't a speed demon, but this is back when 2400 megahertz was the standard for most people's builds. Moving on now, we are going to go into storage, which I just went with a 1 terabyte hard drive, no SSD. And for the graphics card, it's the RX 480 like I was talking about. It was an MSI Armor OC. So from here, I spent $200 on the GPU alone, which was pretty much half the build. Case-wise, I went with a micro ATX little kind of crappy case that I got, but it was cheap, and I didn't need to spend a lot for a $500 build. So for power supply, I was on a limited budget of about $500, and you'll see that in the total. I decided to go with an EVGA 80 plus certified, not 80 plus bronze, but 80 plus certified power supply for 500 watts. It was plenty enough, and I didn't upgrade this power supply until my next upgrade. So in total, I spent about $510 before taxes on this build in particular. It was a good enough build to run at 1080p for most titles. So from here, we're going to be looking at my upgraded build. A lot of the parts I decided to keep will remain at 0 on PC Part Picker. All that means is I kept the part. And it's not much different in terms of what changed, except I do add in a few pieces. So our first part is the upgraded i5 7500. At the time, Ryzen had not just came out, and I was still looking at reviews and decided to go with the i5, but I did regret it wanting to go to the Ryzen 5 1600. I thought overall that would have been a better CPU. They would have performed nearly identically with the parts I had, and I would have gotten more cores and threads. But at the time, I kept my motherboard, and I went with the i5 7500. Moving on to memory, not a lot has changed. I still kept that 8GB stick, however I upgraded with another 8GB stick to create a 16GB dual channel mode for my CPU. This is when prices started to increase, so that's why I put in the $64.89, because that was the price of getting my second stick. For some reason, that was just the prices. My initial one, I paid about $34 to $50, but by the time I went to go get that second memory stick for an upgrade, it went up to $64.99 for a single, just around that much for a single 8 gig DIMM. And moving on, we have the GTX 1070. This was around the time when cryptocurrency was at its peak. My RX 480 was going for around $300, or not the peak, but the start of the cryptocurrency mining was around $300, so I just sold my RX 480 and decided to upgrade to the GTX 1070. The GTX 1070 I spent about $310, so I spent around $10 to upgrade my graphics card, which I thought at the time was worth it. All my other parts stayed the same, including the power supply and PC case as you see in the video here. So there is no upgrade to those, but in total, I spent a little over $578 just to upgrade my PC that include the graphics card and CPU. I also threw in a new monitor. I had a original 1080p 60Hz monitor, which I upgraded later to an Omen 1080p 144Hz monitor. I spent $200 on it. At the time, those were about $300, so I saved some money by going onto the used market and picking it up. It ended up being a fatal flaw since it ended up breaking, but later in the video you see an upgrade to the computer monitor anyways. This is where I thought I would start getting serious about YouTube and that I would start recording more. The i5 was plenty fast, as well as my GTX 1070 having the CUDA cores enabled so that it would accelerate the time needed to process my video. However, that never ended up happening, as I only produced about 2 videos more in the next few years, and it ended up being a waste of time in terms of video editing. Within the next year or so, I did not upgrade. However, I did change the GPU just because I wanted a cooler and quieter system. It was the same GPU in terms of what it was, a GTX 1070. However, I sold my old one to one of my friends for $280 and picked up an Asus dual. I can't remember the exact name. It was a smaller card. It was a dual fan design instead of a blower style, and it was much quieter and much cooler. My blower style card ran at around 81 degrees Celsius, so no room for overclocking or running higher boost clocks, so I was kind of throttled on performance. With the upgrade, in a way, I dropped my temperatures down from 81 down to 71 on the Asus dual fan design. This allowed me to overclock my GPU, which didn't throttle, and it was a nice little upgrade, which I kept on until the Ryzen 5 3600 came out. From here, I decided to sell my computer so that I could have my girlfriend move in with me. We found a place, and when things got settled in, I finally rebuilt my computer. In just a second, you're going to see what my new build consists of and how it's just a much better editing rig as well as a gaming rig in general, and allowing me to finally pursue a VR gaming experience. From here, I'm going to choose the Ryzen 5 3600 as my main CPU for my build. That's what I have currently. 6 cores, 12 threads on 7nm. Crazy good performance in gaming as well as multi-threaded applications. For the CPU cooler, I decided to go with the Dark Rock Pro 4, as it is, according to benchmarks, equivalent to a 360mm AIO, but to average, it's about a 280mm, and it's just a beast of a CPU cooler. For the motherboard, I went with the X470 to save some money, as well as not losing out on a lot of the features that I need, such as VRM potential. So basically, the VRM cooling and efficiency is very good on these MSI motherboards, and plenty for a 6-core processor. For the RAM, it's just the basic 16 gigs of DDR4 3600 CL16 tight timings. I've been trying to get them down to CL14. However, my luck hasn't been very good, as it requires 1.5 volts in order to get it at CL14 34, and that is just a little too much for me. I got it down to CL15, and sometimes if I really have to, I'll do 16 to get a higher overclock on my CPU. For storage, it's an all SSD build. I don't have anything on my computer that really is important besides video games. It's all I've been doing, as well as my current work on Adobe. So speaking of which, I don't really keep a ton, and it doesn't really, I can always replace it with getting a new SSD if one of these break. However, my system is completely SSD, so it's super quiet, and on top of that, it's super fast. So I got 2 terabytes on the SATA drives from the RGB. There at the time were $100 each. And I got an M.2, which you'll see in a second, a Samsung M.2, which I got from when I was working at AT&T. I got a discount on it because I won a employee giveaway for selling. I got a few activations in when I was working at AT&T, and it was just enough that I was entered into a drawing to win $150, which I used on Samsung's website to get a M.2 1 terabyte SSD. I spent about $3 for taxes, not shipping. Shipping was free. And for my GPU, I went with a RTX 2070 Super from Gigabyte. It was only $499. It just came out, so I missed out on a deal that they were having for a free game. However, that's not a big deal to me. For $499, it has been amazing. RTX, when I was playing Minecraft, I know, a weird game to be playing RTX with, it's been spectacular. And for the PC case, this is where I went with a Fantex P350X. They didn't have this case on PC Part Picker, but I'm going to put into the price in there so you guys can see that as well. It is a great case, and I am only replacing this in January when I get paid, because my current case, the P350X, I accidentally removed the power, I guess it would be the power switch, and that has had me to manually turn on the PC by shorting out the switch itself. I don't want to keep doing that, so I'm going to be getting a new case, and I'm probably going to go with the Meshify C, because installing some 120 or 140 mil fans in the front for intake and some for exhaust should allow for better airflow than even just an open system. So I'm very excited for that. Meshify C isn't a very expensive case either, so it gives me a lot of hope. So in general, this PC build was expensive because of the SSDs. I could have went with hard drives and just a boot up SSD, but I really wanted to get that speed. And I also paid a premium for the CPU cooler, which I have no regrets of. In this whole computer, I have no regrets whatsoever. For my monitor, I went with a 1440p 155Hz monitor from Dell. It's around the same prices that you see on there, plus or minus a few dollars. It's been great of a monitor. I absolutely love it. This graphics card pushes the right amount of frames, and I don't miss out too much. So as you can see from my build, we've progressed a lot from 2016. I've upgraded a few times, and I've sold the PC a few times. Yes, I could be keeping the same PC and going through with it, but I just find it better to, if I have a complete build, instead of basically repurposing parts, I just sell it and start brand new. I love building PCs. So 2016 was the first time I built my first gaming PC. Doesn't mean it's my first PC. My first PC I built was when I was 14 years old, so back in 2012. I built my first gaming PC, or not my first gaming PC, my first PC. It was just a standard workstation PC with an Athlon inside, messed around with it, got it up and running. It wasn't anything spectacular, but it was where I started to learn where I loved building PCs. And I continued to pursue from there. This PC right now that I have is going to be something I use for streaming. I'm probably going to be streaming more than I'm making videos, but I did want to show an update of what my PC's been like and how it's been through the years when I started gaming on PC in 2016. I thank you all for watching. There's going to be no advertisements, at least I don't know. I thought I turned off monetization on my videos. I don't really care about making money off of YouTube. I'm trying to just push some videos out for fun. Thank you so much for watching.